The rain came down hard that November evening in Riverside, a small town in North Carolina where everyone knew everyone else's business. Staff Sergeant Maria Torres stood outside the Golden Plate Diner, her uniform soaked through, her pride somewhere down in the gutter with the rushing water. She had been a Marine for 12 years. She had served 2 tours overseas. She had earned medals for bravery that sat in a box under her bed because she never felt comfortable displaying them. But none of that mattered right now. Right now, she was just hungry, broke, and desperate. Maria had returned to her hometown 3 months ago, not in victory but in quiet struggle. Her mother had suffered a stroke, and Maria had taken an early discharge to care for her. The medical bills had piled up faster than she could count. Her savings, meant to start a new life after the service, had vanished into hospital payments and medications. Her part-time job at the hardware store barely covered rent for the tiny apartment she shared with her mother. Tonight she had $8 to her name, and payday was still 4 days away. She watched through the diner's large front window as families ate their dinners. The warm light inside looked like something from another world. Her stomach had been growling for hours. She had skipped lunch, telling herself she wasn't that hungry. But hunger has a way of making liars out of the strongest people. Maria pushed open the door, and a bell chimed above her head. The smell of fried chicken and fresh bread nearly knocked her over. She approached the counter where Linda Davis, the owner's daughter, stood filing her nails. Linda had been 2 years behind Maria in high school. She had never liked Maria much back then, and time had not improved her disposition. "Can I help you?" Linda asked without looking up, her voice flat and unwelcoming. Maria cleared her throat. "I was wondering, do you have any leftovers from today? Maybe something that didn't get served. I can pay a little bit." Linda finally looked up, her eyes scanning Maria's wet uniform with obvious disdain. "Leftovers? You mean like scraps?" "Just anything that's going to be thrown away," Maria said quietly. "I'm not picky." A few customers turned to look. Maria felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she stood her ground. There was no shame in needing help. That's what she told herself anyway. Linda's laugh was sharp and cutting. "Oh, this is rich. Maria Torres, the big hero, begging for table scraps. How the mighty have fallen." "I'm not begging," Maria said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm asking to buy food that would otherwise go in the trash." "Well, we don't sell garbage to people," Linda said loudly enough for the whole diner to hear. "This is a respectable establishment. If you can't afford a proper meal, maybe you should try the Soup Kitchen over on Elm Street. I hear they're real charitable too. People like you." The way she said, "people like you," made it clear she wasn't talking about veterans. She was talking about failures, about people who couldn't get their lives together. An older couple in the corner booth whispered to each other, shaking their heads. Maria couldn't tell if they were judging her or Linda, but it didn't matter. The humiliation burned either way. "I have money," Maria said, putting her $8 on the counter. "I just need something simple, a sandwich, anything." Linda pushed the money back across the counter. "The cheapest thing on our menu is $12. Can't help you. Now, if you're not ordering, I need to ask you to leave. You're dripping all over my clean floor." Maria picked up her money with shaking hands. She had faced enemy fire. She had carried wounded soldiers through hostile territory. She had done things that would give most people nightmares. But this moment, standing in this small-town diner being dismissed like trash, felt worse than any of that. "Come on, Linda," someone said from a booth near the back. "That's not right." But Linda just crossed her arms. "Company policy, no exceptions." Maria turned to leave, willing herself not to cry until she was outside. She had made it halfway to the door when it opened, and a man walked in with the most beautiful German shepherd she had ever seen. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing marine dress blues that looked crisp despite the rain. The dog at his side wore a service vest and moved with the confident precision of a trained military working dog. The man's name tag read Morrison. Maria stepped aside to let them pass, but the dog stopped and sat directly in front of her, looking up with intelligent brown eyes. The animal's tail wagged twice. Rex doesn't usually do that, Morrison said, looking at Maria with curiosity. Then his eyes dropped to her uniform, taking in the insignia and patches that marked her as a fellow Marine. Staff Sergeant. Maria said quietly, early discharge. Morrison nodded slowly, understanding crossing his face. He had seen enough veterans to recognize the look. The weight of responsibility that doesn't go away just because you take off the uniform. The pride mixed with pain. Gunny Sergeant James Morrison, he said, extending his hand. And this is Rex. We're stationed at Camp Lejeune, just passing through town. Maria shook his hand, grateful that at least one person in this diner was treating her like a human being. Maria Torres, pleased to meet you both. Rex nudged her hand with his nose, and despite everything, Maria smiled. She had always loved the military working dogs. They were loyal, brave, and never judged anyone. Were you ordering food? Morrison asked. Maria felt the humiliation wash over her again. No, I was just leaving. But Morrison had already noticed Linda's satisfied smirk behind the counter. He had noticed the wet floor where Maria had been standing. He had noticed the way some of the customers were still staring. He was a trained observer, and he could read a situation quickly. Actually, he said, his voice taking on a formal tone, I just realized I need to ask you something, Staff Sergeant Torres. Maria looked at him confused. Sir. I ordered takeout earlier today, enough for dinner and lunch tomorrow. But Rex and I just got word we have to head back to base tonight. We can't take it with us. Would you be willing to take it off our hands? I hate to see good food go to waste. It was a lie, and they both knew it. There had been no takeout order, but Morrison was offering her a way to accept help without losing her dignity. Maria's throat tightened. I couldn't. It would actually be helping me out, Morrison said, his eyes sincere. Otherwise, I have to throw it away, and that just seems wrong. Plus, Rex here seems to like you. He's a good judge of character. Rex wagged his tail again, as if confirming this statement. Maria felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. If you're sure. I'm sure, Morrison said firmly. Then he turned to Linda, his expression hardening. I need to place an order, the biggest order you can put together in the next 20 minutes. I want a full roast chicken dinner with all the sides, 2 of them. Add some of that pie I see in the case, and some sandwiches for tomorrow. Make them good ones. Linda's smirk faded. That's going to be expensive. I didn't ask about the price, Morrison said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. I asked you to prepare the food. Fine, Linda said, her tone sullen. It'll be about $120. Morrison pulled out his wallet without hesitation. Not a problem. While they waited, Morrison asked Maria to sit with him. They talked about their service, about the places they had been, the things they had seen. Rex laid at their feet, occasionally looking up at Maria as if he understood she needed a friend. Other customers in the diner began to listen. They heard Maria talk about her mother's illness, about coming home to help, about the struggle to make ends meet. They heard Morrison tell her about the military working dog program, about how Rex had saved lives overseas, about the bond between handler and dog. The atmosphere in the diner shifted. The whispers changed from judgment to sympathy. One older man, a Vietnam veteran named Harold, came over to shake Maria's hand and thank her for her service. When Linda finally brought out the bags of food, Morrison handed them to Maria. For your service, he said formally, as if presenting an award. I don't know how to thank you, Maria said, her voice breaking slightly. You don't need to thank me, Morrison said. We take care of our own, that's what Marines do. But as Maria took the bags, something else happened. Harold, the Vietnam vet, pulled out his wallet. Hey, Linda, Ring me up for whatever Maria needs from now on. Put $50 on account for her." "I'll match that," said a woman from another booth. "Make it 100 from me," said another man. "My son's deployed right now. I know how hard it is on families." Linda stood behind the counter, speechless, as 5 different customers created a fund for Maria on the spot. By the time they were done, Maria had over $300 credited to her account at the diner. Morrison smiled. "Looks like this town takes care of its own, too." Maria couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They streamed down her face as she thanked each person, overwhelmed by the sudden kindness after such humiliation. But Morrison wasn't done yet. He had seen Linda's cruelty, and it bothered him. He had seen too many veterans struggle, too many good people pushed down when they were already low. "Ma'am," he said to Linda, his voice cold and official, "I need your manager's contact information." Linda's face paled. "Why?" "Because I'm going to have a conversation with them about how this establishment treats veterans. Specifically, how you treated Staff Sergeant Torres before I walked in." "I was just following policy," Linda protested. "No," Morrison said firmly. "You were being cruel. There's a difference. Now the contact information, please." Linda scrambled to write down her father's phone number, her hands shaking. As Maria left the diner that night, the rain had stopped. The bags of food in her arms felt like more than just a meal. They felt like hope. They felt like proof that there were still good people in the world, people who understood sacrifice and service. Rex trotted beside her to her car, and Morrison walked with them. "Thank you," Maria said again, "for everything." Morrison smiled. "Like I said, we take care of our own. But Maria, I want you to promise me something." "What's that?" "Don't let one person's cruelty make you forget your worth. You served this country with honor. You're serving your mother with love. That takes a different kind of courage than combat, but it's just as real." Maria nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "And one more thing," Morrison added. "I'm serious about talking to the owner of this place. What happened tonight shouldn't happen to anyone, let alone a veteran." "You don't have to do that," Maria said. "I know I don't have to," Morrison replied, "but I'm going to anyway." He gave her his contact information, told her to reach out if she ever needed anything, and then he and Rex walked back to their vehicle. Maria sat in her car, looking at the bags of food, thinking about everything that had just happened. She had walked into that diner feeling like the smallest person in the world. She was leaving knowing that there were still people who saw her, who valued her, who understood. But she didn't know yet that Morrison's promise to contact the diner's owner was about to change everything. She didn't know that this was just the beginning of a story that would spread far beyond the borders of their small town. She didn't know that sometimes, when you're at your lowest point, that's exactly when the universe decides to lift you up. The next morning, Maria woke up to the smell of reheated chicken. Her mother, Elena Torres, was sitting up in bed for the first time in days, her appetite finally returning. "This is delicious," Elena said, her words slightly slurred from the stroke but understandable. "Where did you get this?" Maria told her mother the story, leaving out the humiliating parts but including the kindness of Morrison and the other customers. Elena listened, tears forming in her good eye. "Good people," Elena whispered. "Still good people in the world." "Yes, Mama," Maria agreed. "Still good people." But while Maria was feeding her mother breakfast, something was happening across town that she didn't know about yet. Gunny Sergeant James Morrison had not slept well. He kept thinking about Maria's face when Linda had dismissed her, the shame and hurt that she had tried so hard to hide. He had seen too many good soldiers broken not by war, but by the coldness of the world they returned to. At 0600 hours, Morrison dialed the number Linda had given him. A gruff voice answered on the third ring. "Golden Plate Diner, Richard Davis speaking." "Mr. Davis," This is Gunnery Sergeant James Morrison, United States Marine Corps. I was in your establishment last night, and I need to discuss the treatment of one of your customers." There was a pause. "Is this about Linda? She called me crying last night, saying some Marine threatened her." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I did not threaten anyone. I did, however, witness your daughter humiliate a veteran who was asking to purchase food, a staff sergeant who served this country for 12 years. Look, I don't know what Linda told you." "I know what I saw," Morrison interrupted, his voice hard. "And I know what other customers witnessed as well. Your daughter refused to serve a paying customer, mocked her publicly, and suggested she go to a soup kitchen. All because the customer couldn't afford the most expensive item on your menu." Richard Davis sighed heavily. "Linda's always had a mean streak. I've tried to work on it with her, but—" "With all due respect, sir, trying isn't good enough. Staff Sergeant Maria Torres was humiliated in your establishment while wearing the uniform of the United States Marine Corps. That's unacceptable." There was a long silence. When Davis spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Tell me exactly what happened." Morrison recounted the entire incident, detail by detail. He explained how Maria had simply asked about leftovers, how she had money to pay, how Linda had made a spectacle of refusing her. He also mentioned the other customers who had witnessed it and contributed to Maria's account afterward. "I'm ashamed," Davis said finally. "That's not how I raised her, and it's not how I run my business. I'm a veteran myself. Army, Desert Storm." "Then you understand why this matters." "I do." Davis paused. "Give me the rest of the day. I'm going to make this right." Morrison gave him Maria's contact information, though he wasn't sure exactly what Davis planned to do. He only knew that he had done what he could. Meanwhile, Linda Davis was having a very bad morning. She had called her father in tears the night before, trying to paint herself as the victim. But Richard Davis knew his daughter well enough to read between the lines. And now, after Morrison's call, he knew the truth. He arrived at the diner at 10 o'clock, while Linda was setting up for the lunch shift. "We need to talk," he said. "Daddy, that Marine was so rude to me." "Stop." Richard's voice was firm. "I talked to him. I know what really happened. And I talked to Harold Jenkins and Sarah Whitmore. They were both there. They told me everything." Linda's face went pale. "You humiliated a veteran in my diner," Richard continued. "You made fun of someone who was struggling, someone who served this country. How could you do that?" "She was asking for scraps," Linda protested. "It was pathetic." "No," Richard said quietly. "What's pathetic is a person who kicks someone when they're down. What's pathetic is taking pleasure in someone else's pain." "Are you firing me?" Linda's voice was small now, scared. "No, your family. But you're taking a week off without pay. And when you come back, you're going to apologize to Maria Torres. A real apology. And you're going to work the late shift, the one you hate, for the next 3 months." Linda started to argue, but the look on her father's face stopped her. "And one more thing," Richard added. "I'm creating a new policy. Any veteran who comes into this diner and can't afford a meal gets one for free. On the house. No questions asked. And I'm putting up a sign that says so." "That's going to cost us money," Linda said. "Some things are more important than money," Richard replied. "Like honor, like taking care of the people who protected us. Your grandfather was a veteran. Your uncle died in Vietnam. How would you feel if someone treated them the way you treated Maria?" Linda didn't answer. She just looked at the floor. But Richard Davis wasn't finished making amends. That afternoon, he showed up at Maria's apartment with a check for $500. Maria answered the door in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, surprised to see the diner owner on her doorstep. "Mr. Davis, I need to apologize," he said without preamble, "for how my daughter treated you. It was wrong, it was cruel, and it doesn't reflect the values of my business or my family." Maria didn't know what to say. "I thank you for coming. This is for you," he said, handing her the check. "It's not enough to make up for what happened, but it's a start. And I want you to know that you're always welcome at the Golden Plate. Meals are on the house for you from now on." "I can't accept this," Maria protested. "It's too much." "Please," Richard said. "I'm a Desert Storm vet. I know what it's like to come home and struggle. I know what it's like when the country you served forgets about you. Let me do this. Let me make it right." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Why are people being so kind to me?" "Because you deserve kindness," Richard said simply. "Because you served when others wouldn't. Because you're taking care of your mother when you could have walked away. Because that's what decent people do. They help each other." After Richard left, Maria sat on her couch and cried. But these were different tears than the ones she had shed the night before. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. Her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello? Staff Sergeant Torres. This is Gunny Sergeant Morrison. I hope you don't mind, but I wanted to check in on you." "I'm okay," Maria said. "Actually, I'm better than okay. Mr. Davis just left. He apologized and gave me money for my mother's medical bills." "Good," Morrison said. "That's good. But I'm calling for another reason. I talked to some people at the VA. There are benefits you might be eligible for that you're not receiving. Medical assistance for your mother, housing support, things like that." "I tried to apply," Maria said. "The paperwork was so complicated and I kept getting denied." "That's because the system is a mess," Morrison said. "But I know people who can help you navigate it. People who specialize in getting veterans the support they deserve. Would you be okay if I gave them your information?" "I would be more than okay," Maria said. "I would be grateful." "Consider it done. And Maria, don't give up. You've got people in your corner now." After they hung up, Maria looked down at Rex's photo that Morrison had sent her. The dog's intelligent eyes seemed to look right through the screen, as if he could see into her soul and found her worthy. Over the next few days, things began to change for Maria in ways she couldn't have predicted. The VA advocate that Morrison connected her with discovered that Alina qualified for a special program that would cover 70% of her medical costs. They also found benefits that Maria was entitled to as a caregiver for a disabled parent. The manager at the hardware store, who had heard about the incident at the diner through the small-town grapevine, gave Maria a raise and more hours. "Should have done this when you started," he said. "You're the best employee I've got." But the biggest change came from an unexpected source. A local news reporter named Jennifer Hughes had heard about the story. She had been at the diner that night, sitting in the corner booth, and she had witnessed everything. Jennifer showed up at Maria's apartment on Thursday afternoon with a camera crew. "I want to tell your story," Jennifer said. "With your permission, of course. I think people need to hear about what happened to you, about the kindness that followed, about how a community came together." Maria hesitated. "I don't want to be on TV." "I understand," Jennifer said. "But think about it. How many other veterans are struggling right now? How many are too proud to ask for help? Your story could encourage them. It could show them that there's no shame in needing support. And it could expose Linda and the diner," Maria said quietly. "Is that what you want, revenge?" Maria thought about it. Did she want revenge? Part of her did. Part of her wanted Linda to feel the same humiliation she had felt. But a bigger part of her, the part that had been trained to serve others, wanted something different. "I don't want revenge," Maria said finally. "But I do want people to understand. I want other veterans to know they're not alone. And maybe if people see what happened, they'll think twice before treating someone else that way." "Then let's tell your story," Jennifer said. The interview took 2 hours. Maria talked about her service, about her mother's stroke, about the financial struggles. She talked about that night at the diner, about Linda's cruelty, about feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. But she also talked about Morrison and Rex, about the kindness of strangers, about Richard Davis's apology, about the community that had rallied around her. "What do you want people to take away from this?" Jennifer asked. "That we're all struggling with something," Maria said, "that a little kindness can change everything, and that veterans are people too. We come home from war and we're supposed to just fit back into normal life, but sometimes we can't. Sometimes we need help, and that should be okay." The segment aired on Friday night during the local news. Maria watched it with her mother, holding Alina's hand as her own face filled the screen. By Saturday morning, the story had gone viral. It had been picked up by national news outlets. Social media was flooded with comments, shares, and reactions. Some people praised Morrison and the community. Others criticized Linda and the diner. But most people just wanted to help Maria. Donations started pouring in. $20 here, $50 there. By Sunday afternoon, a GoFundMe page that Jennifer had set up with Maria's permission had raised over $30,000. Maria couldn't believe it. She sat at her computer, watching the number climb, reading the messages from fellow veterans, from military families, from people who had experienced similar struggles. "You're not alone," one message read. "Thank you for your service and thank you for showing us that it's okay to ask for help." "Your courage inspires me," wrote another. "Not just your military courage, but your courage to be vulnerable." But not all the attention was positive. The diner became the target of angry phone calls and negative reviews. People showed up to protest outside, holding signs that said, "Support our veterans" and "Shame on Linda Davis." Richard Davis called Maria on Sunday evening. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Will you come to the diner? I want to do something, but I need you there for it to mean anything." Maria agreed, though she was nervous about facing Linda again. When she arrived on Monday morning, there was a crowd outside. Protesters, reporters, curious townspeople. Richard met her at the door and led her inside, where Linda stood behind the counter looking smaller than Maria had ever seen her. "Linda has something to say to you," Richard said. Linda stepped forward, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice cracked. "I was cruel to you. I was wrong. I can make excuses about having a bad day or being stressed, but the truth is I was just mean, and I'm ashamed of myself." Maria looked at this woman who had humiliated her, who had kicked her when she was down, and she felt pity. Linda looked broken, crushed under the weight of public shame and her own guilt. "I accept your apology," Maria said quietly. "That's not all," Richard said. He gestured to the wall where a new sign hung. It read, "Veterans eat free, always. This is our way of saying thank you for your service." Below it was another sign, "In honor of Staff Sergeant Maria Torres and all who serve." Maria felt tears spring to her eyes. "And there's something else," Richard continued. He pulled out an envelope. "The community wants to help. We've collected donations. This is for you and your mother." Inside the envelope was a check for $5,000, separate from the GoFundMe donations. Maria couldn't speak. She just stood there, overwhelmed by the generosity of people she barely knew. But the biggest surprise was yet to come, because standing in the back of the diner, unnoticed until now, was Gunny Sergeant James Morrison and Rex. Morrison stepped forward, a smile on his face. "Staff Sergeant Torres, I have a proposition for you." Maria stared at Morrison, her heart pounding. Rex sat at his handler's side, tail wagging, as if he knew something good was about to happen. "A proposition?" Maria asked. "The Marine Corps is expanding its veteran support program," Morrison said. "We need people who understand what veterans go through, people who can connect with them, advocate for them. People like you." He handed her a folder. Inside was a job description for a position as a veteran liaison officer, working with the Marine Corps to help transitioning service members and their families navigate civilian life. The position is based at Camp Lejeune, Morrison continued. It comes with full benefits, a good salary, and housing assistance. You'd be helping other veterans avoid the struggles you went through. Maria's hands shook as she read through the papers. It was everything she needed, everything she had hoped for but never dreamed she would find. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you've lived it," Morrison said simply. "Because you understand both sides. You know what it's like to serve, and you know what it's like to come home and struggle. That makes you perfect for this job." "But my mother—" "The base has excellent medical facilities," Morrison interrupted gently. "She would qualify for care there, and the position offers flexible hours so you can still be her primary caregiver." Maria looked at her mother, who had insisted on coming despite her limited mobility. Elena was crying, nodding her head vigorously. "Take it, Mija," Elena said. "Take the job, it's what you were meant to do." "I don't know what to say," Maria whispered. "Say yes," Morrison replied. "Say yes, and let's help other veterans together." Maria looked around the diner, at Richard Davis, who had made things right, at Linda, who was learning what real consequences felt like, at the crowd of supporters outside, at Jennifer Hughes, who was recording this moment for the news. And she thought about all the veterans out there who were struggling in silence, who were too proud to ask for help, who felt alone and forgotten. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, I'll take the job." The diner erupted in applause. People outside who could see through the windows started cheering. Morrison shook her hand, and Rex barked happily, jumping up to put his paws on her shoulders in what was clearly a well-trained gesture of celebration. But even as Maria celebrated this incredible turn of fortune, she knew that her story had touched something deeper in the community. The viral news coverage had sparked a national conversation about how veterans were treated, about the struggles they faced, about the gaps in the system that was supposed to support them. Over the next few weeks, Maria became the face of that conversation. She was interviewed on national television. She spoke at veteran events. She shared her story again and again, not because she wanted fame, but because she wanted to help others. And everywhere she went, she talked about Morrison and Rex, about how one act of kindness had changed her life, about how a Marine and his K-9 partner had seen her when she felt invisible. Morrison deflected the attention. "I just did what any Marine would do," he told reporters. "We take care of our own." But the truth was, not everyone would have done what Morrison did. Not everyone saw the humanity in a struggling veteran standing soaked in a diner. Not everyone took the time to offer help with dignity and respect. The Golden Plate Diner became a landmark of sorts. The story of what had happened there spread far and wide. Veterans from all over the state started making pilgrimages to eat there, to see the signs honoring those who served, to support a business that had learned from its mistakes. Richard Davis never charged a veteran for a meal again. He created a program where other local businesses could sponsor free meals, spreading the support across the community. Within 6 months, 12 other restaurants in the county had joined the program. Linda Davis learned a hard lesson about cruelty and consequences. She worked the late shifts as her father had mandated, and slowly she began to change. She started volunteering at the VA hospital on her days off, reading to injured veterans, listening to their stories. She never tried to excuse what she had done to Maria, but she worked every day to be better than she had been. Maria started her new job in January. Her mother moved with her to a small house near Camp Lejeune, where Elena received excellent medical care and began to recover more than the doctors had predicted. The stress of financial worry had been lifted, and it showed in her improving health. In her role as veteran liaison officer, Maria helped dozens of struggling veterans navigate the complex system of benefits and support. She knew which forms to fill out, which programs existed, which people to contact. But more than that, she understood the shame that kept many veterans from asking for help, and she knew how to reach past that shame with compassion and respect. Rex and Morrison became regular fixtures in Maria's life. Morrison was transferred to Camp Lejeune shortly after Maria started her job, and they worked together frequently. Rex seemed to have adopted Maria as part of his pack, greeting her with enthusiasm whenever they met. One day in March, Morrison invited Maria to watch Rex work with new handlers in training. She stood on the sidelines, amazed at the dog's intelligence and skill. "He's incredible," she said. "He saved my life twice overseas," Morrison replied. "Once by detecting an IED and once by pulling me out of a collapsed building. He's the best partner I've ever had." "I can see why you two are so close." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something? That night at the diner, when Rex sat in front of you, that was the first time he had ever done that with a stranger. These dogs are trained to be focused on their handlers, but something about you made him break protocol." "What do you think it was?" "I think he recognized a kindred spirit, someone who had served, who had sacrificed, who needed a friend." Morrison smiled. "Dogs see things we miss sometimes. They see the truth of who people are." "What did he see in me?" Maria asked softly. "The same thing I saw. A Marine who refused to quit, even when everything seemed hopeless. Someone worth fighting for." Maria felt tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you for fighting for me." "Always," Morrison said. "That's what Marines do." But the story didn't end there, because in April, something unexpected happened. A documentary filmmaker named Marcus Chen reached out to Maria. He wanted to make a full-length documentary about her story, about veteran homelessness and food insecurity, about the gaps in support systems, about communities coming together. "I want to show the whole picture," Marcus explained during their first meeting. "The struggle, yes, but also the hope, the kindness, the way people can change and grow." "Will it really make a difference?" Maria asked. "I don't know," Marcus said honestly, "but I know that stories have power. Your story has already changed lives. Imagine what could happen if we told it on a bigger scale." Maria agreed, but only on one condition: that Morrison and Rex be part of the documentary, and that Linda Davis be given a chance to share her journey too. "Everyone deserves a chance at redemption," Maria explained. "Linda made a mistake, a cruel, hurtful mistake, but she's working to be better. That matters too." The documentary took 6 months to film. It featured interviews with Maria, Morrison, Richard, and Linda Davis, Jennifer Hughes, the veterans Maria had helped in her new job, and dozens of other people whose lives had been touched by the story. But the most powerful segment was a scene filmed at the Golden Plate Diner on a busy Saturday afternoon. The camera showed veterans from all branches of service, from all eras of conflict, sitting down to free meals. It showed Richard Davis greeting each one personally, thanking them for their service. It showed Linda serving food with genuine warmth, no trace of the cruelty she had once displayed. And it showed Maria sitting in a booth with Morrison and Rex, talking about how far she had come. "A year ago, I was standing in this diner, soaked and humiliated, wondering how I was going to feed my mother," Maria said to the camera. "Today, I have a job I love, my mother is healthy, and I get to help other veterans every single day. All because one Marine and his dog decided to see me, really see me." "It wasn't just me," Morrison interjected. "It was this whole community. It was Richard making things right. It was the other customers who contributed. It was Jennifer telling your story. It was you, refusing to give up even when everything felt impossible." "Do you think things have really changed?" the interviewer asked. "For veterans, I mean." Maria and Morrison exchanged a look. "Some things have changed," Maria said carefully. "There's more awareness now, more programs, more people paying attention, but there's still so far to go. There are still veterans sleeping on the streets, still veterans going hungry, still veterans who feel forgotten and invisible." "So what's the solution?" the interviewer pressed. Kindness, Maria said simply. Not just programs and policies, though we need those too, but kindness, seeing people, really seeing them, understanding that the person asking for help might be someone who once risked their life for strangers, treating everyone with dignity, whether they're wearing a uniform or not. Morrison nodded, and for veterans, understanding that asking for help isn't weakness, it's strength. It takes courage to be vulnerable, to admit you're struggling. Rex, lying at their feet, lifted his head as if agreeing with this assessment. The documentary premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in June and received a standing ovation. It went on to win awards, to be featured on streaming platforms, to be shown in high schools and military bases across the country. But more importantly, it inspired action. Congress passed new legislation expanding veteran benefits. The VA streamlined its application processes. Nonprofits dedicated to veteran support saw a surge in donations. And in towns across America, businesses started their own Veterans Eat Free programs, inspired by the Golden Plate Diner. Maria found herself at the center of a movement she never intended to start. She spoke at congressional hearings. She advised nonprofit organizations. She appeared on talk shows and news programs. But her favorite part of every week was still Wednesday mornings, when she met with a group of struggling veterans at Camp Lejeune, helping them navigate the system, offering them hope and practical support. One Wednesday in August, a young veteran named Sarah approached her after the meeting. "I just wanted to thank you," Sarah said. "3 months ago, I was living in my car with my daughter. I saw your documentary and I found the courage to ask for help. Now I have housing, a job, and my daughter is enrolled in a good school. You saved our lives." Maria hugged her tightly. "You saved your own life by having the courage to ask for help. I just pointed you in the right direction." "Still," Sarah insisted, "if you hadn't shared your story, I would still be too ashamed to admit I was struggling. You made it okay." Later that day, as Maria was driving home, she got a call from Morrison. "Turn on the news," he said without preamble. Maria pulled over and opened a news app on her phone. The headline made her gasp. "President awards Medal of Honor to military working dog Rex for extraordinary valor." She called Morrison back immediately. "Is this real?" "It's real," Morrison said, and she could hear the pride in his voice. "Rex is being honored for his service overseas. The ceremony is next month at the White House. And Maria, the president wants you there. You and several other veterans from the documentary." Maria sat in her car, tears streaming down her face, thinking about how much had changed in 1 year. How a moment of humiliation had led to a job, a purpose, a movement. How asking for help had become an act of courage that inspired thousands. And how a Marine and his K-9 partner had seen her when she felt invisible and had changed the course of her life. The White House lawn was more beautiful than Maria had ever imagined. The September sun cast golden light across the perfectly manicured grass, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of late summer flowers. Maria stood among a crowd of military personnel, veterans, and dignitaries, wearing her dress blues for the first time in over a year. Her mother sat in the front row of chairs, stronger now than she had been in months. Elena had insisted on coming, even though the trip from North Carolina had been exhausting. "My daughter is going to the White House," she had said. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away." Morrison stood at attention near the podium, Rex sitting perfectly still beside him. The dog wore a special ceremonial collar, and his coat gleamed in the sunlight. Even from a distance, Maria could see the intelligence in his eyes, the alertness that never quite left a military working dog. The ceremony began with speeches from military leaders, talking about Rex's service, his valor, his countless contributions to keeping soldiers safe. They talked about the explosives he had detected, the lives he had saved, the missions he had completed with unwavering dedication. But then the president spoke, and the tone shifted. "We're here today to honor Rex, a true American hero," the president said. "But we're also here to acknowledge something else. The way we treat our veterans when they come home, the way we sometimes forget the sacrifices they've made." The president looked directly at Maria. A year ago, Staff Sergeant Maria Torres stood in a diner, asking for help. She was met with cruelty and dismissal, but she was also met with kindness, particularly from Gunny Sergeant James Morrison and his partner Rex. That moment sparked a national conversation about how we support those who have served. Maria felt her cheeks flush as cameras turned toward her. "Since then," the president continued, "we've seen real change. New legislation, new programs, new awareness. But more than that, we've seen Americans come together to support their veterans in tangible, meaningful ways. And that started with one Marine who decided to help another Marine in need." The president presented Rex with a special medal, placing it on the dog's collar while Morrison stood by, his eyes gleaming with pride. Rex sat perfectly still, accepting the honor with the same dignity he had shown throughout his service. Then the president did something unexpected. He called Maria to the podium. "Staff Sergeant Torres has become an advocate for veterans across this country," the president said. "She has helped hundreds of struggling service members find the support they need. She has shared her story not for fame or recognition, but because she wants to help others. Today, I'm announcing the creation of the Maria Torres Veterans Support Fellowship, a program that will train veteran advocates and place them in communities across the nation." Maria stood there, stunned, as the president shook her hand. The crowd erupted in applause. She saw her mother crying in the front row. She saw Morrison giving her a sharp salute, pride written across his face. She saw Rex, who had somehow sensed something important was happening, standing at attention beside his handler. "I don't deserve this," Maria whispered to the president. "You deserve it more than anyone," the president replied. "You turned your pain into purpose. That's the definition of service." After the ceremony, Maria was surrounded by reporters, veterans, and well-wishers. But she managed to find her way to Morrison and Rex, needing to share this moment with the two who had started it all. "Can you believe this?" she asked, still dazed. Morrison smiled. "I can absolutely believe it. You've worked hard for this, Maria. You've earned every bit of recognition." Rex nudged her hand with his nose and she bent down to scratch behind his ears. "You too, buddy. You're a hero." "There's someone who wants to meet you," Morrison said, gesturing to a woman approaching them. The woman was in her 50s, wearing a simple black dress and carrying herself with quiet dignity. She extended her hand to Maria. "Staff Sergeant Torres, I'm Margaret Sullivan. My son was a Marine. He struggled when he came home from Afghanistan. He took his own life 2 years ago." Maria's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Margaret said, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "I'm telling you this because he needed help, but he was too ashamed to ask for it. If your story had existed then, if he had seen that it was okay to struggle, maybe he would still be here." She pulled out a photograph of a young Marine in dress blues, smiling at the camera. His name was David. He was brave and kind and funny, and he felt like a failure because he couldn't adjust to civilian life. Margaret's voice broke. "I'm helping create the fellowship program in your name because I don't want other mothers to lose their sons. I don't want other families destroyed because veterans are too proud or too ashamed to ask for help." Maria hugged her tightly, both women crying now. "We're going to help so many people," Maria whispered. "David's story matters. It will save lives." "I know it will," Margaret said, "because of people like you who refuse to let veterans be forgotten." That evening, there was a reception at a hotel near the White House. Veterans from across the country mingled with politicians, celebrities, and advocates. But the most meaningful conversations happened in the quiet corners, where struggling veterans approached Maria to share their stories. A woman named Jennifer told her about how she had been homeless for 6 months before seeing Maria's documentary and finding the courage to reach out to the VA. A man named Robert explained how he had been on the verge of suicide when he heard Maria speak on a podcast about the strength it takes to ask for help. A young couple, both veterans, thanked her for normalizing the struggles of military families trying to transition to civilian life. Each story was different, but the theme was the same. Maria's willingness to be vulnerable had given others permission to be vulnerable too. Richard Davis attended the reception, having flown in from North Carolina. Linda came with him, looking nervous but determined. Linda approached Maria hesitantly. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see here." "No," Maria said gently. "You're exactly the person I want to see, because you're proof that people can change. That mistakes don't define us forever." "I'll spend the rest of my life making up for what I did to you," Linda said. "You don't need to make it up to me," Maria replied. "You need to be kind to the next person who walks through your door needing help. That's how you make amends, by being better going forward." Linda nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm working with the VA now, helping veterans navigate their benefits. It's not much, but—" "It's everything," Maria interrupted. "It's exactly what matters." Later, as the reception was winding down, Morrison found Maria on a balcony overlooking the city. Rex was with him, of course, the dog's metal gleaming in the light from the ballroom. "How are you holding up?" Morrison asked. "I keep thinking about that night at the diner," Maria said. "I felt so small, so worthless, and now look at all this." "You were never worthless," Morrison said firmly. "You were just someone going through a hard time. That night I saw a fellow Marine who needed help. That's all. But you gave me more than help. You gave me dignity. You let me accept kindness without feeling like I was begging. Because you weren't begging. You were surviving. There's a difference." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights. "What happens next?" Maria asked. "With the fellowship program, I mean." "You train advocates. You place them in communities. You build a network of people who understand what veterans go through because they've been through it themselves." Morrison paused. "And you keep telling your story because every time you do, someone else finds the courage to ask for help. It feels like so much responsibility." "It is, but you don't have to carry it alone. You've got a whole community behind you now. You've got the Marine Corps, the VA, nonprofits, volunteers, and advocates. You've got me and Rex." As if on cue, Rex barked softly. "And you've got him," Morrison added with a smile. "He's quite fond of you, you know." Maria bent down to pet Rex, and the dog leaned into her touch with obvious affection. "I'm fond of him too," she said. "Of both of you, you saved my life." "No," Morrison corrected gently. "We helped, but you saved your own life by refusing to give up, by asking for help when you needed it, by turning your pain into purpose." The next morning, Maria woke up in her hotel room to find her phone flooded with messages. The ceremony had been broadcast nationally, and her story was trending on social media again. But this time, instead of sympathy, the comments were full of action. Veterans were sharing resources. Communities were organizing support programs. Businesses were pledging to hire veterans. Nonprofits were reporting surges in volunteers and donations. One message stood out. It was from Sarah, the young veteran Maria had helped months ago. "I watched the ceremony with my daughter last night. She asked me why everyone was clapping for you. I told her it's because you help people who are scared to ask for help. She said she wants to do that when she grows up. Thank you for showing my daughter what real strength looks like." Maria sat on the edge of her bed, crying happy tears. Her mother called a few minutes later. "Mija, I am so proud of you. Your father would have been proud too." Maria's father had died when she was 12, a police officer killed in the line of duty. She had joined the Marines partly to honor his memory, to serve and protect the way he had. "I wish he could have seen this," Maria said. "He can see it," Alina said with certainty. "And he knows that his daughter is making the world better, just like he tried to do." Over the next year, the fellowship program grew beyond anyone's expectations. 200 veteran advocates were trained and placed in communities across all 50 states. They helped thousands of struggling veterans access benefits, find housing, secure employment, and most importantly, feel seen and valued. Maria traveled constantly, training new advocates, speaking at events, sharing her story. But she always made time for her mother, for her work at Camp Lejeune, and for the weekly support groups that had become so important to her. Morrison and Rex remained her closest friends and colleagues. They worked together on countless cases, helping veterans who had fallen through the cracks of the system. Rex, in particular, seemed to have a sixth sense for finding veterans who were struggling. More than once, he had led Morrison and Maria to someone who desperately needed help but was too ashamed to ask for it. The documentary won an Academy Award. Maria attended the ceremony wearing a dress that made her feel like an imposter, standing on a stage in front of Hollywood's elite. But when she spoke, accepting the award on behalf of everyone who had contributed to the film, she focused on what mattered. "This award isn't about me," she said, holding the golden statue. "It's about every veteran who has struggled in silence. It's about the people who showed me kindness when I needed it most. It's about the advocates working every day to help their fellow service members. And it's about a Marine named James Morrison and his K-9 partner Rex, who saw someone in need and decided to help instead of looking away." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "If you're a veteran watching this, please know you are not alone. Your struggles are valid. Asking for help is not weakness, it's strength. And there are people who want to support you, who understand what you're going through. Please reach out. Please let us help." The speech was replayed millions of times. Veteran crisis hotlines reported a 300% increase in calls over the following weeks. But unlike before, the system was better prepared to handle the influx. The advocates Maria had trained were ready. The programs were in place. The support was real. 2 years after that night at the Golden Plate Diner, Maria returned to her hometown for a special event. The diner was hosting a ceremony to dedicate a memorial to local veterans. Maria's father's name was on it, along with dozens of others from the community who had served. The town square was packed with people, veterans from every era, families, local officials, and members of the media. But the person who meant the most to Maria was standing right beside her. Her mother, who had made a nearly complete recovery and was walking without assistance for the first time since her stroke. Richard Davis spoke at the ceremony, talking about how his business had changed, how his daughter had changed, how the entire community had learned from what happened. "We learned that everyone deserves dignity," Richard said. "We learned that kindness costs nothing but means everything. And we learned that when we take care of our veterans, we honor not just their service but our own humanity." Linda spoke too, her voice shaky but sincere. "I was the villain in this story. I was cruel when I should have been kind. I judged when I should have helped. But because of Maria's grace and forgiveness, I got a second chance. I learned that it's never too late to be better. And I learned that our veterans deserve our very best always." When it was Maria's turn to speak, she looked out at the crowd and saw so many faces she recognized. People who had donated to her GoFundMe. People she had gone to school with. Veterans she had helped through the fellowship program. And there, in the front row, Morrison and Rex, both standing at attention. "I came home to this town 2 years ago feeling lost and broken," Maria began. "I had served my country for 12 years, but I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a failure. And one night when I was at my lowest point, I walked into a diner and asked for help." She told the whole story, holding nothing back. The humiliation, the shame, the desperation. But also the kindness, the community support, the unexpected friendship with a gunny sergeant and his remarkable dog. That night changed my life, Maria said. Not because of what happened to me, but because of how people responded. Morrison and Rex showed me that asking for help takes courage. Richard Davis showed me that people can make amends. This community showed me that when we support each other, amazing things can happen. She paused, looking at the memorial with her father's name. My dad taught me that service means putting others first. The Marine Corps reinforced that lesson. But it took coming home and struggling to understand that sometimes serving others means letting them serve you. It means being vulnerable enough to accept help. It means understanding that we're all in this together. To every veteran here today, thank you for your service. And please, if you're struggling, reach out. Let us help. Let us show you the same kindness that was shown to me, because you deserve it. You deserve dignity, support, and community. Always. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Maria saw veterans crying, holding each other, nodding in recognition of shared experiences. She saw her mother beaming with pride. She saw Morrison saluting her, Rex sitting perfectly at attention beside him. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed, Morrison approached her with an unusual expression on his face. "I have something to tell you," he said. "Rex is retiring next month." Maria's heart sank. Is he okay? Is something wrong? He's fine. He's just getting older and he's earned his rest. After 8 years of service, he deserves to spend his retirement somewhere comfortable and safe. Where will he go? Morrison smiled. That depends. I'm putting in my retirement papers too. 20 years is enough for me, and I was hopping. Well, Rex really loves you, and I was thinking maybe we could all be neighbors. There's a house for sale 2 doors down from yours. Maria felt her heart skip. You want to move to North Carolina? I want to keep doing this work, helping veterans. The fellowship program needs a director of operations, someone with military experience and a passion for the mission. Morrison paused. I was hoping that someone could be me, and I was hoping that Rex could spend his retirement visiting the veterans we help. He's good at making people feel better. Are you serious? Completely. What do you say? Want some permanent backup? Maria laughed, tears streaming down her face. I would love that. We would love that. Rex, sensing the emotion of the moment, stood up and placed his paws on Maria's shoulders, his tail wagging furiously. It was the same gesture of celebration he had made when she accepted the job 2 years ago. I think he approves, Morrison said with a grin. That night, Maria sat on her porch with her mother, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Alina held her daughter's hand, her grip stronger than it had been in years. You did good, Mija, Alina said softly. You took something terrible and made it beautiful. I had a lot of help, Maria replied. But you had to be brave enough to accept that help. That's the hardest part. Maria thought about all the veterans she had helped over the past 2 years. She thought about the lives that had been saved, the families that had been kept together, the hope that had been restored. She thought about Sarah and her daughter, about Margaret who had lost her son, about Linda who had learned to be kind, about all the people whose stories had intersected with hers. And she thought about Morrison and Rex, who had seen her when she felt invisible, who had offered help without taking away her dignity, who had started a chain reaction of kindness that had spread across the entire country. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Morrison. Rex wants you to know that he's very excited about retirement, but he insists on still working part-time, says he's not ready to fully stop helping people. Sound familiar? Maria laughed and typed back, Tell him I understand completely. Some of us are just built for service. That's what makes you both heroes, Morrison replied. Maria looked out at her quiet street, at the American flag flying in her neighbor's yard, at the peaceful suburban scene that had once felt like failure but now felt like home. She had asked a Marine for leftovers, expecting nothing more than a meal to get through the night. Instead, she had received dignity, friendship, purpose, and a mission that would last the rest of her life. Sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when we're brave enough to ask for help. Sometimes one act of kindness can change everything. And sometimes the people who save us are the ones who simply choose to see us, really see us, when we feel most invisible. Maria smiled, thinking about all the veterans she would help tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. Because that's what Marines do. They serve, they sacrifice, and they take care of their own.